Welcome back to She Can, where women lead by example. We interview women from all walks of life about their journeys, how they got to where they are today, to be role models and mentors to others, because it's easier to be what you can see. And I'm very excited to talk to Nik Govier today. Nik, welcome to She Can. You're the founder and CEO of Blurred, which is a B Corp communications business built for a blurred world. And you'll tell us more about that in a second. Prior to that, you co-founded a multi-award winning agency called Unity, which you ran for 12 years. You also co-founded and invested in an agency called Tin Man, and you have stakes in other businesses such as Albright, which is a global working women's network. In 2024, you were featured in PR Week's Power Book. You were in the top 10 for DEI and Best Agency for Corporate and Financial Communications, and you've won numerous other awards. Tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Well, firstly, I like that I just saw your dog's tail walk past us. I have my dog in the background there as well. It's obviously a dog afternoon. Thanks so much for having me here. I think the key thing to say is really I got here by being myself. And I know that might sound a bit ludicrous because that's the key with all of us, really. But I am neurodivergent, so I've got ADHD and dyslexia, and for a lot of my life, I didn't fit in, or I fitted in, say, culturally, but there was always something a bit off, and from a really young age, even at school, I remember being written off as being kind of quite stupid and lazy, and people didn't get me. And I spent many years trying to prove everyone I was neither of those things. But how I really ended up thriving was by creating my own worlds to thrive within. So, I was in my late 20s when I set up my first agency. And I actually always thought it was just because I was really entrepreneurial, which I am. But I only realized a couple of years ago, it was like this bolt of lightning. I was like, no, I've always set up my own agency so I could build an environment in which people like me could thrive. And that is the thing I'm actually most proud of about Blurred. And that's really unusual, is we've built a business that is super diverse across multiple data points, from ethnicity to socioeconomic background, disability, neurodiversity, gender, of course, sexual orientation. And the reason we thrive and people within the team thrive is because rather than getting everyone to be a blurred person, yes, everyone has to believe in the vision and the values, but ultimately we've created a working environment where everybody can bring their best selves to work, but knowing they're supported and seen.
Yeah. Nik, which is amazing. And you spoke about it, and we will dive into that a bit more later. From one neurodiverse person to another, Nik, because I'm ADHD, all my children have ADHD, my husband has ADHD, and I think you recognize it in each other, and you know the journey of the other, because we have a lot of similar journeys within this wide spectrum. We have a lot of things that unite us in a way. And I can see that my children see that in other people as well. And it just gives you this thing that you don't quite fit in. And I think you turned that into being so unbelievably open and flexible and building a company culture that's really open. Tell us a little bit more about it. Tell us a bit more about Blurred. What do you do at Blurred, and also how you got to have such an amazing company culture that you get recognized for?
So Blurred, we call Blurred because we blur the lines between a number of disciplines. So we're primarily a communications consultancy, but we're also a kind of bona fide sustainability consultancy and a management consultancy. So we help give really big global clients a better story to tell by helping them be better businesses. So we focus mainly on areas around sustainability, human rights, people related issues like DEI, etc. But rather than it being like, how can we spin something to tell a good story, we can actually do the back bit as well, of pointing out, areas of, reputational risk and harm, help them fix those, change the business, and then have a better story to tell. And we work with a lot of the world's biggest companies, actually, very well-known kind of global names that I won't reference, if that's okay, in case anyone assumes, therefore, that a lot of these companies have huge reputational issues. But needless to say, by being a huge multinational, invariably there are always areas that they can improve.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm most proud of, to still answer this question, is we do an anonymous employee survey twice a year, and it's over 40 questions, so it's really quite in depth. And our latest one, which was in Q4, we had a 98% approval rating. So I'm really, really proud. But one of the things I'm a big believer in is people, planet, and profit, as you'd expect as a B Corp. And in the same quarter, we were recertified for B Corp and got a score of 120. For context, the pass mark is 80 and our last score was 99. So again, we're really proud of that.
Amazing.
And we delivered a really good profit, as well as a business, in terms of our margin for the quarter. And that's what I'm really proud of. And that's what my leadership credentials always focus in on. If it was profit at all cost or any cost, it's literally not what I'm interested in. I really believe that it's part of my role in my industry to prove that you can deliver all of those things. And it's not easy, and we don't always get it right, obviously. But I was very proud in the most recent quarter to have such, strong results across the whole thing. But for us, the leadership principles at the heart of the business really are about seeing people as individuals, and not just because it's the right thing to do. So we don't just have a diverse team because it's a tick box. We are predominantly women. I'm very proud of that. But we do it because we genuinely believe that our clients have big problems and they need diverse perspectives to help them solve those problems. And if everyone looked the same and everyone sounded the same, then we might as well just have one person in the business. So it's very intentional. But if you're going to have people from diverse backgrounds, or perhaps with different situational elements, then you need to create an environment where they can thrive. And that is what that's what we've done. So from day one, coaching has been embedded into the business. Every single person at Blurred has coaching, one-on-one coaching every fortnight. We have loads of talking therapies. There's loads of support from, £1,000 towards a neurodiversity assessment, to loads of training, to lots of stuff around mental health. And we really, really think about intersectionality. So, where gender hits a disability and a socioeconomic background, for example, and looking at how we can get the best out of that person by giving them the support they need. And one of our values is democratic, but it does not mean everyone is treated the same. It's actually quite the opposite. It's that everybody's voice will be heard, but we try to even up the platforms to ensure that everyone has the confidence and the space and the tools they need to be heard.
Nik, I love what you just said, and what an amazing way to lead. Tell us a bit more about that. What kind of a leader are you? How do you want to lead going forwards?
So I think a really good example of how I lead is something that I introduced in the last quarter, actually, which was really heavily referenced in our employee surveys, something that people loved, which was called the deal. And it's just about setting extremely clear boundaries and expectations of everyone in the business. And it come about because we've always been a best place to work. We've always really lent into really supporting our teams. But in some instances, there was a slight misunderstanding of what we meant. So the phrase we used to use is, we help you be your true best self. And the true is reflective of some of those things I talked about before, which could also be circumstance or life stage, that someone might be going through divorce, or in my instance perimenopause. So I'll probably use some of the wrong words here, but the best was representative of still bringing your best self to work. But there was some misunderstanding around that, and some people almost interpreted it as, well, I am really grumpy in the morning, so I shouldn't have to smile on a call. And it being like, no, that's not what we mean. We still need to be a high performing team. So we created, and I led it, this thing called the deal, which and I can, share it if it's helpful, that you could do a link with it somewhere if that's relevant, but it's on our social channels. But it basically sets out the deal, what we expect from people and what we expect back. And so it says, these are all the things we put in place as an organization. Everything from coaching to asking people to give, when everyone joins, we get their 5 personal needs, and then we are reviewed regularly as a business against those things. Are we meeting your 5 personal needs? Right the way through to this kind of ever-evolving DEI strategy in its broadest sense. And then the kind of end line of that section is all to make this the best place you have ever worked. But here's the deal, this is what we expect from you. And it's things like, we expect you to lean into that coaching. For us, progression doesn't just come from becoming better at your job. It comes from really tackling those knotty issues that have perhaps held you back your whole life. And we expect constant striving for betterment from intern to CEO, and it says that it's like, I am constantly pushing myself. And what we're trying to say is, we will provide all the support you could possibly need, but we do expect you to lean into that and constantly work on yourself. So the end line of that section is also that you do the best work of your careers at Blurred. And then the kind of end line of the whole thing is, bring your best self to work, knowing you are supported and seen. And it went down so well. And then it's kind of followed by very specific things of what we mean by that. And then we do loads of training and we provide loads of support across multiple areas. And what it means for someone like me is, I don't really understand time. That's partly how my ADHD-ness manifests. I can't spell or write. That doesn't mean I can turn up to a meeting late. It doesn't mean that I can send a document to a client covered in typos. Like, I still have to work on myself. What it does mean is Blurred will give me all the support and the tools that I need in order to combat those things, but they're not an excuse. But I am seen. I am seen and I am understood. And honestly, I think it's part of our success because there's lots of people that were allowed to lean into those different things.
Nik, it's fascinating to listen to you. I love what you do. What an incredible way of approaching a company structure and how to get everybody to turn up as their best selves, being so transparent. Tell us a bit more. You say that you have impact for communications, impact for creative, and impact for outcomes. How do you achieve that?
Well, it's through blurring those 3 things of sustainability consultancy, management consultancy, and communications consultancy. And I guess for me, again, it's part of my leadership, really, in terms of, to what end do we do anything? And by the way, I may not have answered your question earlier about some of the things like my leadership style, like around empathy, etc. So I can come back to that. But basically, my last agency that I co-owned for 12 years, it was just the comms side. And although I was really proud of the work that we did, and we worked for some brilliant companies doing some great work, I think it's partly an age thing, but you get to a point, you have kids and you're like, but I actually want to make a difference to the world, not just in terms of selling more stuff for a huge multinational, I want to leave a more positive mark on the earth. So hence why I created this business with some brilliant co-founders that was based on delivering impact. And that's the end, that I'm talking about. It's like we can tell some really great stories about our clients because we've helped create a bunch of change that's made a difference.
Yeah.
So for me, that was, really important. And I think that I've managed to recruit a lot of people into Blurred who do things that I can't do. And I'm really proud of that, that I managed to build. I am not a management consultant or a sustainability consultant by a long stretch. So I've always believed, as part of my leadership style, in bringing in people who are way better than me. Always, always, always. And not just in terms of subject matter expertise, but generally. But also we've managed to hire people who wouldn't work at any other consultancy or agency because they know the values at the heart of that business. And often it is, again, older people who are a bit like, I've spent years just doing this stuff to pay the bills, but now I want to pay the bills, but also know that I'm doing something that contributes to the greater good.
Amazing, Nik. So let's go into some of your personal leadership styles.
So I'm very open and honest. I'm very transparent, and sometimes too much so. But I honestly think it's so vital to overshare because I think sometimes people assume life is easy for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I've talked a lot about things that have impacted and affected me. Like, I've had 6 miscarriages in my life. I also have a very neurodivergent family. My children span ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, cognitive processing disorder. I've got a lot of it going on. So I probably have quite a lot more neurodivergence myself also that is yet to be kind of uncovered. But I feel it's really important to talk about the stuff and the struggles. I wrote a very honest blog post about before I was on the right medication of when I entered kind of perimenopause and I had a full panic attack at Heathrow Airport and it was absolutely horrific. And, you know, I started to not barely even know what my name was, and suddenly you're like, who am I? What's happened to me? So I speak really openly and honestly because I think it's really important that people know that this stuff does exist and that there's a
Yeah.
business also that can understand that and supports people. One of my I like to lead from the front, I do. Um I like to really embody the values that I expect to see in other people. I'm quite open about the things I'm really not good at. I don't pretend to be great at everything. I'm really open about where I'm not because I don't value that in others. I don't value people winging it in an area they're not great at. I think it's absolutely fine to be brilliant in one area as long as you're open and honest about it and you constantly strive for that betterment and fit within that team. But, I'm never going to be able to interpret scientific reports, not in my wildest dreams. So it's okay to be like that. A flaw, I think, one of a few is actually empathy because I think I'm too empathetic, actually. I think I might even be a bit of an empath because if I go to, say, the theatre, I cry instantly and it's almost like I can feel are you the same? It's like I can
Same.
feel everyone's feelings.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like I cry just because I'm surrounded by lots of people. It's really strange.
Yeah.
So I need people on my board who can help me see beyond the individual to make the right decisions often for the whole team. Um, but I think compassion is really important. So it's not that there are strengths in that, but as I've said, I know in the main where I'm not so strong.
Yeah.
And that's also why coaching is so fundamental to me and has given me the confidence to be really clear in my areas of strength and my areas of weakness. So, for example, I don't even chair my own board. Our coach, who's also our non-exec director for People and Purpose, chairs our board because one of my areas of weakness, which you will probably relate to, is my brain is so fast that I often don't take people with me. So I need somebody who slows it down.
Yeah.
I don't mean that I'm super, super bright, by the way. It's just it races ahead.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also weak in the sense of this is the best description I've ever heard of my type of ADHD, which is for Ferrari speed brain, but push bike brakes. I can gain so much momentum that I'm almost on another plane, with 8 different things constantly running through my head. And then suddenly the wheels can come off. So I need a lot of support around me to pull me back and to make sure that I do mindfulness and that, I have breaks in my day and all those kinds of stuff. But again, that's the structure I've put around myself. And that's the kind of leadership that I'm show people is that I've needed to put boundaries around myself. So I expect others to do that and take personal responsibility for themselves, whilst not trying to make people conform, if that makes sense.
Yeah. As you're talking, Nik, I can recognize a lot of me in there, and I think that I have the same exact sort of challenges, and sometimes they're superpowers, and sometimes they're challenges, and they're the
Yeah.
same thing. So it's all about my New Year thing for 2025 is to try and be the calmest person in the room, which I will never be, but it's just getting me to a normal level potentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah. I could totally understand that.
um, Nick, so what do you feel are the sort of biggest lessons? You've been in this industry for a long time. You're running a very successful business from many points of view. So what are the biggest lessons that you feel could really support others?
The biggest lesson for me was never compromise on your values. You know, granted, I've done that by creating my own business, but I actually, co-ran Unity for 12 years with someone whose values I didn't align with. And I'll never regret that time because actually I learned so much from it. But when you start to lose yourself, you've got to ask yourself if that's the kind of right move. And actually it was really hard for me to step away from my own business. Really, really hard because it was a 50-50 partnership. I couldn't out him or oust him. If I wanted out, I had to leave myself, which was heartbreaking. And especially because my husband is a stay-at-home dad. I've got children with, you know, complex needs. So to walk away from everything was unbelievably difficult. But ultimately, I knew really early that the values were wrong. Yeah, I was like, oh, but I put 3 months into this. There's no way I can walk away now. 12 years
Yes.
later. So I think values it's really important because that's the difference between your heart singing or your heart dragging along the floor behind you. It
Yeah.
really is. And it was just revelatory to me when me and my co-founders came together and it was like, oh my God, we believe in the same things, that the same things matter to us. And that's just been, fundamental. So I do think finding people or aligning yourself with a business or an organization or a team or a boss or a CEO that shares your values is really important. And then also, of course, I'm going to say there's somebody who does see you for who you are. And I think there's so much diversity out there in the world. There's loads of companies that don't employ that diversity, but there's such richness of talent. And I just think it's so important from both people who are hiring that they understand the brilliance that can be harnessed from different perspectives or views or ways of doing things, but also from people who are looking to progress. It's like really hone your brilliance. That's what I ended up doing. Where I realized I couldn't conform on these other things, I just really became very good at what I'm better than anyone else at. Well, not anyone else at, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I really, really honed that. And although I'm unemployable because, I've worked for myself for so long, I couldn't work anywhere else. But my skills are very employable. Because I'm really good at those very few, these very specific things. So, but again, it doesn't mean you don't work on yourself always. And I think everybody should always be willing to work on themselves because there's always ways to do that doesn't compromise your values or doesn't stop you being your true self. The fact that my phone goes with 12 alarms across the day, it's just a simple way I have learned to manage some of my neurodiversity so that I can break the focus of what I'm doing and realign for the next meeting. So 15 minutes before this call, an alarm went off to say, in 15 minutes time, you're going to be recording something. And then literally on the minute when I have to press the button, another alarm goes off. But so these are ways that I've learned to adapt, and I'm never late for a meeting, even though in my nature would mean I'm always late. So that's an example of you've always got to work on yourself, but know your strength and then lean into that. And then you'll be valued because you'll be providing value.
Yeah. Nick, and I'm wondering, are there any other tips you would have for young women coming into this industry, into the communications, media, consultancy industry?
Just never let anyone put a shadow over you. There was many things wrong with the Thatcher era, but I am a child of the 80s, and it never crossed my mind that as a girl who progressed to a woman, I couldn't be anything I wanted to be because the most significant person in the country at the time was Margaret Thatcher. So I didn't agree with her politics, but it never crossed my mind. So it never crossed my mind that it would be a bigoted world, or one where I couldn't be anything that I wanted to be. So therefore I acted in accordance with that. And that's just what's really important. And that's what, I hate to see when women sit back and men lean forward, or when there's just automatic assumptions are made based on gender. So it's like, be that person. And it's slightly related, but my friends used to really mock me. They're still my absolute best friends, who I started my first job with when I was 21. They used to mock me because I'd wear like full suits and everyone else just wore like, tops and trousers. And I was like, you'll have the last laugh. Yeah, I'll have the last laugh because, of course, I ended up being the first promoted because I looked like the next level, and therefore I was taken that much more seriously. And some things like that come quite instinctively, to me. But it's like, no, you belong. And then when you wear that, either physically with the clothes you're wearing, or because you got that level of confidence, that's what people see. So, we deserve our place in this world. So just enter it, you know, wearing that cloak from day one. And
And
you'll
don't find reasons not to belong.
don't find reasons not to belong. Exactly. For every place you don't belong, there is another one that you do belong. And if people don't welcome you with open arms, then they don't deserve you.
Yeah. Nik, so what would you say are the sort of things that are challenging for you in your day to day?
Well, the economic climate is challenging. There's not a
Mm,
business in, well, there are some businesses, but very few businesses in the land that aren't feeling the, headwinds. It's very challenging to me to see what's going on in the States, particularly with the changing government again, and how that will influence big business. Um, Quite a lot of our clients are headquartered in the States, and that is a deep concern to me as a human being, as a parent, as a citizen of the world, as well as a business leader.
absolutely.
So there's a bunch of things that concern me. But I have built this world around me where I can function and thrive in the main. My office is in London, but I live on Dartmoor National Park. I go up for 2 days every other week. It kind of calms my manic brain. It's right for my children. I get to balance both worlds. And look, I'm 50 this year, and I'm actually really proud. I went for dinner with one of my best friends who I started work with when we were 21, and I said, it's like I finally know who I am. I genuinely know who I am. I know who I am as a parent, as a wife, as a friend, as a business leader. This sounds very superficial, but I'm proud of the way I look. I'm fitter than I've been for a long time. I sleep better than I have done for years. I've put so many little things in place to to get to this version of me. And it's
Mm,
funny because it's just that dawning realization of, yeah, I'm all right with myself, which even like 2 years ago, I probably would have been like, am I? I don't know. That child who was told she was stupid and lazy and didn't quite fit in, was always kind of there. And whereas now I've built a world where I can, in the main, thrive, not always, but in the main. And if I can do that, then anyone can do that.
yeah,
You just
thank you.
got, you've just got to dig in, work on yourself, but also know what makes you you and lean into that.
Yeah, Nik, that was my next question. What are you most proud of? And you just answered that. You're most proud of the person that you are now. And I love that. And if you can do it, anyone can do it. So thank you for saying that. So what are your plans and goals for 2025 and beyond?
So, personally celebrating being 50. So, I've got lots of extremely glamorous things planned. Um, because I do think it is a bit of a like yardstick moment. I don't remember what I did for my 40s and on my 30s. So they're those milestones, but this one's going to really count. And professionally, it's more of the same. It's that people, planet, and profit. I really want to keep delivering that for my business, and therefore proving to our industry that those three things don't have to be mutually exclusive, that you can deliver for people and for human beings in our own team and beyond, that you can be a really kind of climate sensitive and aware business as well as through the work that we do, you know, as a business ourselves, and that we can be profitable and make money, which is important because it's money that gives you choices. It's money that allows us to behave in certain ways and support our teams in the way that they've supported. And also, you know, it's not something to be embarrassed of, you know, to have a nice home or to have built, you know, the right environment to be able to support your children or whatever that might be. So for me, professionally, it will be continuing to push along those lines of people, planet, and profit. And for me as well, personally, to keep making sure I keep the balance in line between work and home, which I'm pretty proud of. And again, it's why I don't regret 6 miscarriages, because I'm a way better parent than I would have been if my children had come easily. Like, I do believe I get the balance right in the main.
Nik, and what would you like our listeners to take away from your story?
Just be you, but the very best version of you that you can be, whilst also giving yourself license to shout and scream and kick walls when things don't go right, and knowing that I might sit here sounding super confident, but it's taken me 50 years. So, you know, be on the path, feel the lows, celebrate the highs, learn from both of them, and just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. Nik, I'm so grateful for your story. I absolutely love everything you do and how you put that into practice on a business level, and how you really care about people, planet, and profit, and how you get that so right. And I think that's particularly important as we have people like Mark Zuckerberg and other role models around the world. Now, going back to this masculinity and toxic masculinity, where the aggression and the profit, it seems to be the only thing that we need to push for. And that's absolutely not true. We didn't get this far to go back. So I'm very grateful for you to be leading with that, with your own story and how you set up your businesses that really prove that that's not the case.
100%. And thank you so much for inviting me on.